Hi, welcome to our presentation, Engaging Generation Z. My name is Chelle Marshall, and I'm an educator at Think Global School. My co-presenter is
Adnan Mackovic, and I am a principal or one of the principals at Think Global School. Chelle is in Canada. I'm not sure if you said that.
No, I didn't say that.
And I am in Sarajevo, Bosnia at the moment. And our goal today is really to start off and hopefully end by inspiring you to expand beyond your school walls. We are a traveling high school, and we are constantly going beyond our school walls. And we understand that as a school, you may have certain contexts and restrictions that may not allow you to do what we are doing, but we're hoping to tell you the story of how we have capitalized and built upon the resources that we have in the communities so that you can see how you could potentially try and do that in your own local context. So the driving question for today is, how can we enhance student learning through local community connections within your local community? We'll give you examples of how we have done that across our curriculum and different countries that we go to. We'll explain a little bit more about who we are and what we do after we give you these introductory slides. But hopefully you will leave today having brainstormed an action plan for your schools and your communities, and bringing those communities into your school so that you can expand your learning ecosystem so it doesn't only rely on you as teachers, but also embraces the whole community and resources that you have available to you. The whole concept that we are presenting today is really related to expanding that ecosystem, building community connections, building connections with experts in your community, with artists, scientists, bloggers, journalists, parents of your students who could provide you with these connections, opening up the world of your classroom or opening the door of your classroom for the world to come in. We'll be talking about how to use the resources that are available to you and how to connect them to how we have connected them to 21st century skills and how potentially you could do the same, and really trying to convince you that place-based learning through community involvement enhances student engagement. We have seen it in our experience, and we have seen our students change from relatively interested in things that they're doing to 100% interested in things that they're doing. We'll tell you a story of our growth and a story of our curriculum development, and hope really to inspire you to explore this option and to explore going beyond your classroom walls and engaging the communities that you live in and using them as resources in your classroom. So who are we? Where do we come from? We both work for Think Global School, and our story really starts with our mission. We were an IB school, and upon realizing and looking at our mission, we realized that we really were not capitalizing on our traveling aspect, being in all of these communities, but having students simply be in the classrooms and not fully engaging and learning from firsthand experiences. So after we realized that, we decided to change our curriculum and have developed what we now call Changemaker curriculum, which is fully project-based, place-based, community-centered. The goal behind our school is to create curious and knowledgeable individuals who are motivated to effect positive change, not only in the communities they live in, but also in the communities that we visit as a school. Our educators come from all over the world. Our students come from all over the world. So we have two cohorts of 30 students who are in two different countries at the same time, and we travel to 4 countries per year. And in our cohort, we have 30 students from 22 countries, variety of social, economical backgrounds, religious, cultural, all sorts of spheres of life, and all sorts of backgrounds. Our goal, like I said, is to develop these students who care, who are compassionate, curious, and really interested in motivated to effect change in their communities. Like I said, the methodology and the educational approach that we use is centered around project-based learning, but the emphasis is really on place-based experiences. Our curriculum depends on the countries that we go to, and we'll give you a few examples later on so that you understand what we're talking about. And the third component of our curriculum is social emotional learning. Now, our goal is not only to create students who are academically strong, but also students who are a whole person, students who understand the challenges of the world and are equipped to deal with those challenges as they leave high school. Through our advisory program, which centers around both group approach as well as individual approach, our students continuously look at themselves and the world around them and how that interaction works and where they stand in that world. So these 3 components together give us the Changemaker curriculum. And as we go further, we'll explain a little bit more through examples and how that works. But I'm really hoping that what you hear today from us and our story, again, that it inspires you to try this in your own community, because you will see that it works. You will see that your students' engagement will increase. It's a common knowledge proven through various studies that student engagement decreases higher up they go in the high school system. And with this approach, bringing the real world into your classroom, your student engagement will increase. Every year, we as a school do the Hope Survey for with our students, and maybe some of you do that as well. And our results are absolutely incredible. They're the highest they've ever been, and we have seen on day-to-day basis our students' engagement go exponentially grow from the switch that we've made from the IB program to this. It provides you with an opportunity to impact your community and the community to impact you as educators and as learners. And with all of this in place, it boosts your students' academic outcomes and performances that you're looking for, and that you're hoping that they would achieve. So it really, the goal here is that you center your educational world not only around your classroom and you as a teacher, but to expand that ecosystem to include quite a variety of guest speakers, experts from the community that you're in. Chelle will go a little bit more into details of how we do this in our school and in our context.
So I'm going to explain first how our educator design modules work. Students in our school spend about 60% of their time engaging in the curriculum through educator-led modules, and then about 40% of their time they design and implement their own personal projects that are tied to the curriculum. So I'm going to give you some examples of our experiences, and hopefully you'll be able to find some elements that you could apply in your local context. The first module that I'm going to talk about, which is a teacher design module, occurred in Botswana, and the summative project was oral, or the summative product was an oral storytelling based on the student experiences. So the students attended workshops given by local authors talking about the oral storytelling tradition in Botswana that was culturally based. But they also worked with researchers that were looking at large game movement within our area of study. And they were also hearing from and then presenting back to local business owners, looking at the change that the government had instilled from large game hunting and away from large game hunting. So the safari owners were trying to figure out how they were going to remain viable economically. And so we drew these three elements together, looking at these, you could call them three different stakeholder groups. And then our students were sort of challenged to come up with a solution for the business owners, looking at through the lens of oral storytelling. It was quite amazing to see our students out doing data collection alongside of interns from different colleges and universities with this data collection, interacting with locals who were giving their stories to the students in order for them to get an understanding of the elements that are different between an oral story and something that an author would write for a book audience. And then when they were presenting their oral stories, they were also challenged to include the aspect that would be relevant to the local business owners. So you can see the elements of different community, in this case it was stakeholder groups, but different community interests that were involved that our students were able to learn from and also to give back to the community by presenting some of their ideas to the local business owners. The next project that is a teacher-led module, well, we were located in Hiroshima. We were looking at the concept of the development of nuclear energy. So it began with the historical context of World War II and the dropping of the atomic bomb, the development of the technology for that, and then tracking that technological development through time to the present, where they were looking at how Japan is reliant on nuclear energy and that relationship through more recent historical events in Fukushima. So these are very prevalent historical events that the students were studying, aspects of physics, aspects of history that are typical subjects within a school, but also looking at it from different perspectives. The students' summative product was to develop a nuclear debate. So in addition to the history, in addition to the physics, they were also looking at the debate model, how to research your question, how to present arguments. And so quite a few of these different elements were put together. And we were really able to highlight the 21st century skills of effective communication through the debate, and also risk-taking. And risk-taking came into the project via our connection with the local community. So our connection to the local community involved visiting the Peace Memorial Museum in Hiroshima. We also visited several other museums that had to do with the historical context. And we also came into contact with the hibakusha, which are the nuclear bomb survivors. And so they had that firsthand interaction with locals, and then we also worked together with a local school to host our debate, but also to build an event that then the hibakusha could present from. They could present their story, give their understanding and their context of the event to a wider audience. The real benefit here was a reciprocal one. So what our students were learning from firsthand experiences of an interaction with the hibakusha, they were also the hibakusha, which are elderly people in their 70s and 80s now, having the ability to share their stories with the youth and a larger audience. This kind of interaction is something place-based, but it is something that is really powerful. The fact that we're not just taking things from the community, but we're also able to give back. And that is an essential element in place-based learning that you would really want to think about as you might be developing your own place-based or your community connections. So we'll move to the next slide. This module took place in and around Mumbai in India. And in this module, students were building a business strategy for local artisans. And what's happening with the local artisans is they have, they're building, or they're, I guess they're developing their crafts and trying to build a larger audience to be able to display their crafts to, but also for commerce to be able to sell. And that's something that all artisans most likely struggle with. So our students were, we build a connection with the local artisans, built an understanding about the significance of their artwork, and also built skills in things like, as you can see in the picture here, being able to display, being able to advertise, being able to highlight what the artwork is about to the audience, and then also provide an ability for the local artisans to be able to sell their artwork. So that's the reciprocal relationship that was developed. As you can imagine, 21st century skills that we were, that students were being able to practice, develop skills, but also apply, is the teaming and collaboration, as they all had various roles within the project, and also their multicultural literacy as they were developing their connections with the locals. So those are just a few examples of the educator-developed curriculum that we are engaging with our students. These modules are also meant to be an example to students so that they understand how to draw in the various aspects of the curriculum, build them into a project for themselves, and then engage in the local community. So in our next slide, we'll see some examples of that.
Can I just interrupt, Chelle, for a sec? One of the things that you might be wondering is, how does this translate into a traditionally presented subject on the transcript? What does this look like? The parts that we did not add to the slides here, but are just as big component of these projects, are those content-related standards. We call them learning targets, and that's where the content comes from. In this particular project, it's obviously business-related content, so automatically the transcript will show that the students had business class, and those learning targets that we incorporate in each project basically will dictate, to an extent, the content that we present to our students. But the difference is that we engage the community to present that content. We as educators help facilitate it, and obviously jump in and do have sessions where we explain things as well, and lessons and all of those regular things that we would normally do in the classroom. But in this example, we bring in people who have set up business to help our students learn about that. And we rely on the community to provide that content. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Okay, so we're going to give you some examples of what the students have produced, but how they have also engaged in the local community to further their understanding, to further their learning. So the first example that I'm going to be talking about is a student who was inspired by his connection with the refugees. We were located in Athens, and we were participating in a volunteer experience that they had set up and their students were engaging in. And it was a connection, a youth-to-youth connections with refugee youth. And our students came in to support the students that were there. They met over the course of 6 different weekends, working with the youth to develop their skill in English, and also to develop their skill in something that might be translate into job-related skills. So this student, who is like many students, is very much into video games and also technology. His interest in that, he decided to take and incorporate into this project by building a video game that was based on what he saw and experienced and heard about is the refugee experience. And he was able to really develop technical skills in video gaming and technology, and also have a very valid storyline based on his experience with refugee youth. The refugee youth at the same time were building their skills in English and gaining from not even just the job skills that were being talked about, but by having a real connection with other youth. The next project that I'm going to talk about occurred in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and it was somewhat aligned with what our teacher-led module was about, but we had 2 students that were really interested in highlighting the themes and experiences that they had through slam poetry. So we had experiences with going to museums, with having local guest speakers come and talk to our students, and then we were also able to visit some NGOs. Within the context of those community connections, these 2 students were inspired to write about it through the medium of slam poetry, thus highlighting their skill in creativity at the same time. So I hope you can see that students, when they are given the freedom and when they are shown how they can capitalize, will also really find these very valuable community relationships and bring them into their own personal projects.
So that was our story. That's how we have developed this project and program, and how we have incorporated the communities that we go to into our curriculum, and how we have used the resources available to us in these communities, not only for our students to learn, but also for our students to give back to these communities. So you might be wondering now, how do we do this in our own schools? You might be thinking this is not possible. We're not a traveling school. You don't have to be a traveling school to do this. This is absolutely scalable, and all of your schools in your own context. The modules that we were talking about, the e-commerce module, you don't necessarily need to be in India to do to help artisans put their product into some sort of a platform and have your students learn about setting up a business in that way. You can do that in your own city, in your own country. And the same goes for all the other projects that we have talked about. You can engage the scientists in your communities. You can engage the authors and storytellers within your community to help you deliver the content that you're trying to deliver. Yes, we are a project-based school, and you may or may not be. You may have the constraints of other programs that you're doing. We ourselves were an IB school, but even within that program, we were able to capitalize on the communities that we were in by giving students time within the IB curriculum as related to the units that they were covering to interact with certain guest speakers. So how do you scale this to your own programs, and how do you approach this and make this replicable and applicable to you and your context? Number one, find your local experts. Use your students' parents. Use the wider community. You have universities, colleges, NGOs, journalists, newspapers in the city. Find them and make connections. Make connections with them so that you can, if you can't go to them, bring them to you. And really look at, if you do have constraints of curriculum, look at where in your curriculum, in which particular unit you could do that. You don't necessarily need to be doing this on a large scale for every single lesson and every single unit, but identify units where this is possible and lessons within that unit where this is possible, to show to your students that their community has value and that they can contribute to their learning. Because by doing that, you will see your student engagement grow, and their interest and their passion for their learning. The other good piece of advice would probably be to look at your field trips and tie them to your communities. Tie them to the issues that are happening in your communities that could be related to the curriculum that you are exploring, so it doesn't end up just being a trip to the mall. Really center it around the expertise that you're looking for and the lessons that you're trying to teach the kids within the curriculum. Concentrate on 21st century skills in addition to the learning standards that you must cover. Allow students to collaborate and learn all of these other relevant skills that will go well beyond their high school experiences. In the next slide, we have prepared a document that could hopefully help you structure some of these conversations and help you start planning this approach and looking at your own context and applying everything that we have just talked about. Chelle, do you want to go into this one and explain it?
So the document that is within the link has some sequences, some steps that you can follow. It's not meant to be a step-by-step, do one and go to two and go to three. It's more, if you read through it, you'll see the important, relevant aspects that you may or may not want to incorporate into your process. But it is worth looking through the whole document. The first part of it, and something that I think is one of the most valuable aspects, is to start small and build on positive successes that way. So once you make a positive connection and you incorporate that into your curriculum, that'll start that'll start the momentum going, and you can see the gains that you're making and be able to capitalize on the positives, and then reorient so that you make anything that might be a negative, you just reduce it. Another thing that I think that is really important is to consider your time frame. A lot of these connections take time to foster. Oftentimes, the first person that you connect with may not work, either because it's not as closely tied to the curriculum as you want it to, or the timing may not work out. And so really leave yourself enough time to foster a really good relationship before you actually bring the person into your classroom or have that visit or have that experience. The next thing that I think is really important amongst all of these hints and tips is to really work at preparing your students for the experience. Doesn't matter what age your students are or what level of understanding that they're coming from, the more that they're prepared for the experience or for the guest speaker, the more that they'll be able to take away from it. What we do with our students is we have them take ownership over the experience. We have the value and the belief that our students can learn from any experience that comes their way, and from speaking to many different people. And so what we want them to do is capitalize on it, get the most out of that experience by being prepared with what questions, what are good value questions that they might ask that will get the information that they're interested in. And then the other thing that you might do after your experience with a guest speaker or going on a field trip is to evaluate it and give feedback to that person. You may decide that, no, that didn't work out. We're not going to actually do that again. And that's fine. You really should be willing to evaluate the experience and either let it go or else change it so that it's more relevant in the next time that you actually have that interaction. Those are some of the big things that you'll want to focus on when you're trying to engage with the local community. The second half of the link that we've given to you is your workspace. This is where you get to start building on your next project, so your next idea, and that is to make a connection with your local community. We've given you some prompts to go through and some things to consider that will help foster that community connection and help build it into a successful one. So we hope that you find value in that, and you do really make it into as much of a positive as we found for us, for our students and their student learning and their engagement.
Absolutely, and really, I hope that you, from our story, have been inspired to try this and to give it a go. It's not going to be probably as smooth as you might think at first, because ours was messy, but it's absolutely worth it. It's absolutely worth the effort, and seeing your students' passion for learning grow, and your own walls expanding to include a lot more, a wider array of experts and people who can help you deliver the skills and the content that you're trying to deliver. Both Chelle and I are happy to help you with any of these steps. If you have any questions, if you have anything else that you'd like us to clarify, give you feedback on your own planning or your own context, have questions for us, or how we're doing things, please reach out. We would be happy to talk to you and help you get going. Thank you.
Thanks.